Welcome to Meet the Masters of Insurance webinar series. I'm Lawrence Geller, the founder of For Advisors Only. This is the 44th of what we expect to be a great many webinars with Canadians who've dedicated their careers to learning the art and science of insurance sales and service. Webinars in this series are now scheduled through the end of March of 2025, and more interviews are being added regularly to the schedule. Over the years, I've observed that every successful insurance agent who I've met has succeeded differently, even if they're in the same field, deal with similar clients, and even if they are related or in business together. That's what makes the sale and servicing of insurance one of the best careers that I can imagine. It's possible to become a success in our business with diligence, integrity, and experience. With this webinar series, we intend to prove that any type of person can succeed with time and hard, thoughtful work in insurance. Our goal is to create a video record for each of these masters of insurance so that some of their expertise and experience will be available to anyone who'd like to learn from them into the future. Today, it's our honor to have Mr. Joe Sheehan with us. Joe entered the insurance business in 1966. He has the requisite CLU and ChFC professional designation from Advocate, but that's not what Joe's about. His most important experience, he said, was attained early in his career while dealing with the deaths of his sister, brother, and both parents over a very short period of time. Having to deal with the realities of cancer, heart disease, aging parents, and ultimately death forced Joe to reconsider his approach to his own life and his role as an insurance advisor. Joe tells his clients that life insurance or critical illness insurance are just a completion bond for helping people achieve the key goals they were pursuing before the interruption of sickness or death. LDS's process produces peace of mind because their clients can work out for themselves what they need to do to deal effectively with life and with death. Joe has a keen interest in personal development and fitness training. He and his wife, Mary Frances, love golf, travel, film, and volunteering. Joel's a founding member of CLU, the Conference for Advanced Life Underwriting. He's a board member of the Leacock Foundation, as well as being a former member of the board of Face the Future and the board of the Granite Club Golf Club. Good morning, Joe. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Lawrence, nice to meet you again and continue the conversation. I want to thank you and Krista for, first of all, inviting me to this, but also giving me the opportunity to just reflect upon my own life and it's been a great review. So thank you for doing that. In preparation for this, one of the things I was thinking about, there's a guy by the name of Joe Coughlin who wrote the book, The Longevity Economy, and addressed CLU and has been a big sponsor of Manulife's longevity program. But in talking about longevity, Joe Coughlin said that one of the key determinants for a successful, healthy life is an area code. So one of the things that I realized that I've been blessed with in my life is that I've had two important area codes or two important environments that I was basically able to grow and develop in. One was my family and one was the insurance industry. And, you know, as you mentioned earlier, you know, my family, we experienced a great deal of difficulty, but one of the things that came out of that was a strong kind of sense of family values. I'm the youngest of 10 kids. A lot of my, you know, my first three sisters were nuns, and the next two brothers were priests, and a lot of them were in either teaching, healthcare, or the insurance or plumbing business. But out of that, what came out of it was a strong family sense of family values, a sense of being a leader, sense of giving back, and most importantly, a sense of being an educator and being educated yourself. So the whole idea of learning and continuous learning started at a very early age. Also, you mentioned that, I had a lot of transition in terms of I had a sister die at 48 of cancer, and I had a brother die at 44 and of heart disease. And I was in my 20s when that happened, and that threw me into the deep end of being an advisor. Um, and the other major initiative, or I say environment, that came out of that was the life insurance industry. I started with Mutual Life in 1966, but where my real career began was when I first qualified for $1 Million Roundtable and got introduced to the whole concept, or the whole idea of the whole person concept. Back then it was the whole man concept, very early on. But I got introduced to the importance of personal development and personal growth, and also the sense that the way to be successful in life is really help your clients become a success. In the course again of being in the insurance industry, I was on the board of directors of the Charter Life Underwriters in Toronto. And at the same time, I was on the board of directors of a group called the Community Contacts for the Widowed. And I got exposed through not only through $1 Million Roundtable, but through them to Lynn Kane and Betty Jane Wiley, who both wrote books on widowhood. And I decided to do a fundraiser and awareness raising seminar that the Toronto Life Underwriters supported me in doing it, and developed a seminar called Dealing Effectively with Life and Death. And the whole idea behind it was to make people more aware of what widows have to deal with, and how badly the whole society, or whole industry infrastructure, just didn't take into account the real emotional impact of death. In the course of putting this together, it became one of my most profound learning experiences. The whole idea behind dealing effectively with life and death was that no one wanted to talk about death. So let's start with life. And I got Wayne Dyer, who was at the time a very popular speaker. He wrote a book called Your Erroneous Zones. And I got him to do a presentation. This was pretty big back then. We had 900 people in the St. Lawrence Center to hear Wayne Dyer. And 2 weeks later, we had another 900 people to listen to a panel on dealing with death. In the course of preparing for that, I was doing my $1 Million Roundtable, type A, be super planned and all this stuff. And Wayne Dyer said, "For crying out loud, Joe, are you always this neurotic?" He didn't quite say it quite that succinctly, but anyway, it was a real wake-up call when I realized afterwards, you know what, like I'm not liking the way I'm performing here. And so I started to get a series of wake-up calls as I went through this. And those wake-up calls were, while I was preparing this seminar, my own father died. So that was the third death in our family. And I was my father's, I was a son, I was a beneficiary, I was his advisor. I had helped my father deal with transitioning the family business to my brother. And anyway, I was on this panel with some people from the Clark Institute and Betty Jane Wiley. And while I was preparing to talk about this, I was also preparing to give a speech to the $1 Million Roundtable and the subject was be the captain of your own estate planning team, which was my model at the time for running my business. Anyway, when I got thrown into the deep end and the feedback of realizing how ill prepared I was for dealing with some of these issues, and I got to mention one other simultaneous thing that was going on. I had set a goal as to become the leading producer at Mutual Life of Canada. I used to compete against Larry Kinlan and some of those guys, and it was all about sales. And I'd set a target to set a company record to be the first guy to sell $10 million of life insurance. And anyway, the big deal was then you got to go to the annual meeting, and they had the leading producer stand up, and this guy who was a manager in Vancouver, um, he's speaking to me while I'm standing up in front of a whole auditorium full of people. And he said, "Isn't it amazing that Joe accomplished this goal? He broke a company record, being the first guy to sell $10 million. And he told me next year he's going to sell $15 million. What was interesting about that was I had never had a conversation with a guy. And it was one of those things when I was at the top of the game, I realized, is that all there is? You know, is the old Peggy Lee, is that all there is? And there was a Joseph Campbell had a great description of this as being a guy who spends his whole life climbing the ladder, and he gets to the top of the wall, and then he realizes that he had his ladder against the wrong wall. And when I was at the top of my game, thinking I was, you know, really a hotshot insurance guy, I realized that that my whole system wouldn't work. When I gave my talk to $1 Million Roundtable, I came out of that realizing great speech won't work. And so I had a series of these slaps on the head, just wake up calls to say, look, you know, you need to change what you're doing, and you need to change how you want to be in the insurance business. Oh, did I mention one of those other life events that I was going through was that I was in the process of getting married. And my wife deserves sainthood for this, but on our honeymoon, I announced to my wife that I was going to take a sabbatical, that I was going to research a new idea for living my life and a new idea to be an advisor. And that new idea was that I wanted to learn how to advise people to attain health and wealth, to deal with all the inevitable consequences of how do you deal with sickness, how do you deal with loss, how do you deal with divorce, how do you deal with all these things that in our business we're supposed to be able to help people do. Well, I had the realization through all these wake-up calls that I needed to get my own life in order. I needed to basically, well, what I did was I became my own first client. I took a year off and I researched how to change myself, how to become a better person. And I had a model, and I took a lot of courses. One of the guys that I discovered in the course of doing that was Ken Dykewald. I got introduced to the whole idea of successful aging. You know, what do you need to do to have a healthy body, healthy mind, positive? And, you know, I just took a lot of workshops. I read a lot of books. That led me, and Lawrence happened to mention in our previous conversation about Tom McQuillan making 50 cold calls a day. I only made one cold call in my entire life, but it was a significant cold call. I cold called a guy who was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for economics, a guy by the name of Dr. Kenneth Boulding. And I went out to Boulder, Colorado, and I made a cold call on him at the University of Colorado. Told him I was here. I was on a self-directed sabbatical to research how to advise people on attaining health and wealth. In a conversation with him, one of the things that he said was, look, if you're going to do this, you need to find new access routes into the system. And those access routes into the system are the cracks in the system. And I realized right then and there that up until that point, I had wondered whether I'd stay in the insurance business. But at that point in time, I realized that I had a new purpose in the insurance business. And that was to help people find the cracks in their own system. And that became the kind of the motif for life design systems. And the whole idea behind life design systems is that we're all human. We're going to face adversity in our life. No one bats 1,000. So you need to train for life. You need to basically find a way to develop the skills and the attitude and the best practices for living a successful life. But the parallel back to that whole idea behind life and the insurance business, one of the other major insights that I had at that point in time was that if I'm a life insurance agent, then I decided to become an agent for change and to become a catalyst. That my role was not only to advise people on insurance, but the first word in life insurance was life. So the idea that I came up with was that, you know, people don't want to talk about insurance until they know how much you care about their life. And so I dedicated myself to learning how to advise people on basically designing their own life. And the key idea behind life design systems is this: your most important asset. And I often ask people this question: what do you think your most important asset? And by the way, Lawrence was in the top 100 of this, because he's about 1 in 100 that said my life. Most people say, well, my family, my health, whatever. But your most important asset is your life. Without having your life in order, it's tough to be successful in either life or business or whatever your calling happens to be. So one of the things that I decided to do was to help people design a system for discovering what an optimal life would look like and how they could go about building a system to get that. And as I often tell and remind Jake, we are not in the God business. I work with my son, Jake. But I remind myself and I remind Jake constantly, we are not in the God business. It's not up to me to tell people how to live their life. But what I realized, that I could be a catalyst for change. I could be a learning channel. I could be a channel for resources, for ideas on how they could start to figure out what do they need to change in their life. And what developed out of life design systems was a parallel process, was that I could help people organize their financial affairs and their life insurance and their estate planning and their insurance and all that. But while I was doing that, it gave me cover to really have a look at what are they doing in their life that's not working, and where are the cracks in the system? Where are things that if they can't see a behavioral problem, or if they're not dealing with a health issue, like a good example of cognitive dissonance is that if someone says, my most important asset in life is my family, but they're working 60 hours a week, they don't show up for their kids' hockey game or dance recital or whatever, they're not living a true life based on what they really want and what's important. So the whole idea behind cognitive dissonance was to basically be able to find an opening. And the Japanese and Leonard Cohen talk about the fault in the system. Is the crack is where the light gets in. And what became my job in life was to find a way where I could have a difficult conversation. So I became a specialist, and I trained for this, was to look at how can I make it safe to have a difficult conversation, to talk about someone that may have a drinking problem or may have a functional relationship with themselves or their family or their children or their business partner or whatever. And by the way, what I was constantly training for was looking at my own blind spots, the things that I needed to do to become a better person, a better father, a better spouse, a better whatever. And I had a lot to work on. As Bill Bell reminded me lately, he said, it's like Lee Trevino says, the older you get, the better I was. Well, I have people around me like my children and other people in my life that are great sources of helping me identify my blind spots and helping me grow. And so one of the things that Jake and I developed was a learning platform to help people figure out how they could recognize what wasn't working in their life, what was the crack in the system, and also how could they start to design their own system and their own team for going in the direction they want to go in. And I just want to just loop back for a second before I talk about Jake, but I want to acknowledge the importance of some of the people in the insurance business that were my mentors and advisors and people that pushed back with me. I was in when I was thinking of leaving Mutual Life, and which was a big step after 14 years to walk out and start over again. I had a study group. I had people in my study group like Joe Dickstein and David Cooper and Roger Kedwell. I had other people that I got introduced through PPI and through my other industry connections, like people like Jim Burton, and who basically expanded my envelope about the potential of what was out there as basically a person and as a life insurance person. And people helped me along the way. People like Bob Clark and Ken Greenfield, they were early partners in terms of helping me develop an idea called the crash test. And the crash test is basically a modeling system to help people figure out just how do things work. And so when Jake joined me, I have been trying to make this crash test system work, but I realized I didn't have the math skills and I didn't have the computer skills to be able to run financial models, but also to run visual narratives. And when Jake joined me, this will be about 17 years ago now, one of the first things I said was, look, Jake, I've been trying to make this work. You need to go and figure out a way of doing this. So Jake, along with a buddy of his from the University of Guelph, they sat down and they figured out how to start to build this using Excel. And so what is the crash test system? The crash test system is basically a numerical model that can take whatever the client says to us that, okay, I want to achieve these goals and I got this. So the whole idea is, where are you? What's the starting point? What do you got? Like, you got your RRSPs, you got your non-registered investments, you got a business, you got, I own property, I got a cottage, I got whatever it is. And at some point in time, I want to either sell the business or I want to retire or whatever it is. So what I do on the life side is I help people establish their life goals. Like, what does their future look like? What's their optimal life look like? And what Jake does is that he draws out, okay, well, what do you got and how does this all work? And so what Jake does is he puts together a visual narrative of, here's what your family tree looks like. Here's what your org chart looks like. Here's your advisory team. Here's how all your finances work out. And he can run a numerical model that says, based on all your assumptions and all the things you told us, here's how it's going to work. Your RSP is going to grow at 7% tax-free. Your non-registered is going to grow at 5% after tax. I got a business and I'm going to sell it in 5 years or 10 years and it's going to be this. And I got a property, I'm going to sell it here. Whatever it is, whatever the client tells us, Jake can put that into a narrative. They can follow along, cell by cell by cell. Here's how this is all going to play out. And then we take and say, okay, you said you needed 500 grand a year after tax. Here's what it looks like. The reason it's called a crash test is it's better to crash and burn on paper than it is to do it in reality. So a lot of people do not have the advisory system. They don't have the learning platforms in place to take and forecast over the current and long term what things are going to look like. So one of the ideas behind this is that in the old days of the Cold War, they had what was called a DEW line. And a DEW line was all across northern Canada. And DEW line is DEW. It stands for distant early warning. and NORAD set that system up so Canada and the United States could tell whether, Russia was going to send some bombers. So one of the ideas behind this crash test was to set up a DEW line, a distant early warning system, so people could walk through how their current strategy, how their current system, how their current advisory team, how they were operating, their whole life system. They could see it in a visual way, but they could also see it in a numerical way. And here was the good thing, is that we could stop selling. We didn't have to basically back the hearse up the door, because we were just taking what the client would tell us and we would map it out. And it was a very simple equation. The client would either hit their goals or not. And their current system was either going to work or it wasn't. And our job was to basically map it out and let the client find out discover their own cracks in the system. But also, once we knew the cracks in the system, then our job was, okay, how do we help that client understand that they need to change whatever they need to change? And, there's an old expression that says, everyone wants to be great until they find out what it takes to be great. Okay. And so what happens is that change is difficult. And, firing an accountant that's been your lifelong advisor for 20 years is not easy. Telling your son that, they're not the best successor, that his sister is a better successor, not an easy conversation. So what Jake and I developed over the years, and I guess I better stop at that point in time. One of the things that Jake did when he joined me, and I'll come back to what I was going to say, but one of the things that happened was that, I said to Jake was, look, I have not been, I've been successful in spite of myself. I always had to rely on people to talk about stop loss rules and map these things out, because I just didn't have those skills. What Jake did was he filled in the cracks in my system. He identified some of the things that I wasn't good at, and he got good at it. And again, the insurance industry helped me do it. So guys like Steven Sikora at Sun Life, Hemel Balsera at Manulife, I said to Jake, look, you go and get them. And I asked these guys, I said, look, train Jake on tax and estate planning. And I said to Jake, take whatever they're telling you and you put it into a visual and numerical model. And that's how Jake built our current crash test system, was taking all the work that we were doing, how we applied this to our clients. Jake just kept iterating and refining and building this crash test model that we still use to this day, and it's still a live model. So back to where we are right now, what we do in this is that we take and help people walk through their own futures, and we help them design or discover where the crack in the system is. We help them, if they don't have the resource network, we can help them do it. We have an extensive network of practitioners, both in the financial side, but also on the life design side. So I have a whole network of coaches, therapists, doctors, you name it. And so basically, when the client is ready to learn, and by the way, just I want to interrupt myself. The whole idea behind Life Design Systems, when I started it in 1980, was to systematize the Zen statement, when the student's ready, a teacher will appear. And back in 1980, when I set up Life Design Systems, I set up a parallel network called the Life Expansion Network. And the whole idea behind that was how to attain health and wealth. And we brought together people who were good at making money and people who were good at living their life, but mainly people that knew how to change, that knew how to learn, knew how to grow, and learned how to be in collaborative and cooperative learning structures. And so that's what we do today, is we build learning platforms and learning teams. And our goal as running Life Design Systems is to form a partnership with our clients where they're learning partners. And so we have the platform. What Jake has done is that he's put together a network of independent advisors. We have Jake has what he calls a confidential estate network assessment system, and where we can take and do significant research for our clients. And we can take and basically take the client situation and run that through various models and get multiple perspectives on it in terms of how's all this going to work. But most importantly, how does it all fit together? And what we find today is that the major crack in in financial planning is lack of integration. Everybody's got, you know, the great home entertainment system, but no one supplied the cables to hook it all up. So what Life Design Systems really is, it's really it's the connective tissue that helps people grow, learn, get healthy again, or whatever it is. But that's a role that we try to provide, is that we're basically navigators, we're synthesizers. You know, we we go do the research, and where most of the research comes out of, it comes out of our learning curve. It comes out of the challenges that our clients present to us. It comes out of the challenges. What do we need to grow as people? What do we need to grow as businesses? Where our role has evolved, and when Jake first joined me, it became an example of, okay, Joe, you're great at talking about all this stuff. Put your money where your mouth is. And the goal was with Jake was to say, okay, I'm Gen 1, Jake's Gen 2. You know, my goal was, okay, Jake, I'm here and he's back here. And as quickly as we could, we wanted to reverse it so that I had to take myself out of the spotlight and be the main guy and start moving Jake forward as the main guy. The good news is Jake's the main guy, and I love being in the background because that gives me lots of time to play golf, travel, and do the stuff I really love. And the stuff I really love is to research successful aging and basically work on what do I need to do now that's going to help my clients put themselves on easy mode in the future. And so I practice and I research and help people deal with getting sick, getting diagnosed, having their wife come home and say, I'm out of here, tired of your workaholism, you name it, okay? And the blessings I've had through my life is that I've had to deal with a lot of these issues in my own life, and I had to deal with them through my family or through my clients. But the problem is that, you know, we're always growing. There's always, you know, like getting better in life or getting better in golf, there's always more room to grow. And so what Jake has freed me up to do by taking over and really developing the systems that I never developed, like the, you know, the reporting systems, the service systems, the prospecting systems, what Jake has freed me up to do was basically to go research the emerging needs of our clients. And those emerging needs are, what am I going to do if I sell my business for 200 million and I wake up and I realize the money isn't it? What am I going to do when I lost my role in life? What am I going to do when my wife wants to spend more time with me? And, you know, I really want, you know, I've had all this freedom, right? So there's all these wake up calls that people think when they achieve their goals that they don't anticipate that there's other things that that they have to deal with. So part of my life right now is researching longevity. One of the things that's on my learning curve is that back to the insurance industry, Manulife invited me to a conference about 6 weeks ago called Longer, Healthier, Better. And it was a conference in Boston on longevity. And when I was at that conference, I realized that, I'll back up a second. Excuse me, I just need to have a drink here. When I was at that conference and I heard Brooks Tingle, who was the head of John Hancock, what he said was John Hancock's role and their goal as an organization was to help their clients live longer, healthier, better lives. I realized that I've been doing that since the middle 70s. I realized that when I first set up Life Design Systems, Manulife helped me set up Life Design Systems. And, when I realized that kind of life goes in circles, and all of a sudden I'm back and I realized that, Manulife Canada owns John Hancock, but John Hancock is way ahead of rolling out the Vitality program than Manulife is. But Manulife is committed to catching up and really rolling this out. So one of the things why I believe this is such a strong initiative is that when you look at the population or the demographic cohorts of the advisory system, a lot of advisors are in their late 50s. And what's ahead of them? Ahead of them is basically a lot of life changes and inevitable life consequences. So one of the things that John Hancock and Manulife have built with this longevity program that they had in this conference was that they have a whole faculty that covers the longevity hub. It covers all the different aspects of successful aging: diet, nutrition, sleep, stress management, assessment, just all the tools that you need to basically handle the inevitable consequences of life. And what I think is really the big opportunity in our insurance industry is that the role of the advisor. And where I really believe is that the advisor, if they basically embrace this whole program of looking at what do they need to do to live a longer, healthier, successful life, that they will then take that learning from their own experience of change, their own experience of growth, that they'll take that and they'll pass it on to their families, they'll pass it on to their staff, they'll pass it on to their clients. Most importantly, they'll pass it on to their communities. One of the biggest things about the life insurance industry that I've learned, and I heard this when I first got on first entered the insurance business. No one has insurance. No one has endurance like the man who sells insurance. Well, it's updated now. No one has endurance like the person that sells insurance. Okay. The fact that life insurance is a very difficult conversation, that advisors are really pros at handling difficult conversations. But the key thing is we need to have difficult conversations with ourselves. We need to have these difficult conversations with our families, with our partners or whatever. But we need to start mapping out how prepared are we in the future. We need to start running our own models, our own crash tests in terms of saying, how's this going to work? Lawrence reminded me of Sandy Pollock, wrote a book, Don't Leave a Mess. Okay. I haven't read the book, but it's a great title. But the key thing is that one of the things that I've realized from having some near-death experiences myself and from helping people die is that the one thing you're going to want, or people are going to want at the point that they're on final, is they're going to want peace in life. And one of the things where peace in life comes from is basically looking back and recognizing that they've had a meaningful life, that they've contributed, they've helped others grow. That Warren Buffett's main goal in life is that the people he loves, that they have him love him back. Okay. If it's good enough for Warren Buffett, why isn't it good enough for us? Okay. That, what can we do to, have effective relationships with the people we love and care about? What can we do to open those doors, to break down those barriers where people who are into fight or flight, who are not open to learning, to not open to hearing about their blind spots, what can we do to find the crack in the system and help them, let the light in and make a change now before it's too late? One of the metaphors I use with our clients is a couple of questions. what are you waiting for? Like, you got a life. Like, don't assume you got 10 years. Don't assume you got 5 years. I mean, we don't even know we got a week. So start preparing today. Start, and if you had to run a marathon, you wouldn't wait to the day before to start running that marathon. So, guess what? At some point in time, we're going to run a marathon. Either we're going to be in a doctor's office ourselves, or a family member is going to be in there, or a client, or whatever. At some day, we're going to be on final, or it's just over. And so I think that, we need to start training today. To that end, one of the things that I'm working on is a daily ignition system. What are the fundamentals that I need to do? These fundamentals change for every person. So my prescription is not your prescription. But the key thing is there are fundamental things in life. There's fundamental things in basically planning. There's fundamental things in basically effective relationships. There's fundamental things in being a good leader, a good communicator. Whatever that is for you, get the feedback, get people around you that are willing to point out the cracks in the system, the cracks in your system, the blind spots. One of the things that was a great metaphor for me in my early life, I've had to update it for current language, but in the Wild Wild West, the Army, they used to employ indigenous scouts. And the challenge for the indigenous scouts was to go over the hill and research where the threats were, and then come back and then deal with the general who thought he knew everything, who was totally in charge, who basically controlled all these situations, and tell him, look, friend, you go over that hill, you're going to get massacred. And if you take this army over that hill, you're going to get massacred. What's our role? Our role is to be scouts. Our role is to take, and through our own life experience, is to take a look at our life, take a look at our planning systems, and make sure that they're up to date. And, everyone's talking about artificial intelligence systems. I would encourage that there's two things that you can do every day. And that is, and the example I use with my clients is this, is I ask them, if you had access to the most sophisticated artificial intelligence system in the world and you didn't know how to turn it on, what good is it? The second thing is, if you had an $800,000 Ferrari and you didn't know how to turn it on, what good is it? Okay, so guess what? Between our ears, we have a natural intelligence system. The second thing is, the clients we deal with, most of them are Ferraris. They wouldn't have got to where they are without being high performance people. So one of the things that what I'm working on these days, and it's always ongoing development, is a daily ignition system. What do you need to do every day to turn yourself on? What do you need to do to find out, what does your best self look like? How can I create a system to take and continue to become my best self? Okay. By the way, no one bats 1,000 on this one either. It's learning on learning and relearning. And one of the most important things is, if you've been around for a long time, is to unlearn. T.S. Eliot, the writer, had a great description where he called a person a bundle of outdated responses. And when you look around, we're dealing with people, including perhaps ourselves, who are bundles of outdated responses. They've got outdated mindsets. They've got outdated behavioral habits. They've got all kinds of things that in the long run are not going to work. And that was one of the major things that I realized back with Wayne Dyer, and when I was taking a lot of these seminars. What got me here is not going to work going forward. So we have to be constantly reinventing ourselves. And the way around that is to get people around you that are willing to call you on your blind spots. They're willing to help you discover your blind spots. And most importantly, they're able to be patient with you while you work through your own learning curve. It takes forever. I think Lawrence wants me to take a breath.
Joe, tell me, you said that you only made one cold call, and that was not to sell insurance. Where do your clients come from?
Our clients come from me living life. So I travel, I study, I take seminars, I work out every day. I play well, if the weather's good today and tomorrow and Friday, or today and tomorrow, I'll have played 115 rounds of golf. So I play a lot of golf, and I talk to a lot of people, and I play golf with strangers. Um, but one of the things that I realized, don't be a pain in the ass. One of my goals in life was to not walk into the gym at the Granite Club and have people jump behind the machine because here comes Sheehan to try and tell them what to do or sell them insurance, or just be a pain in the neck, right? So one of the things that I do is that I look around, I have a lot of relationships, and the people where I think I can help, I help. So this week I called the client that I knew her nephew had died, and I know the family, and I called, and I'll help them. I'll be a resource network and helping dealing with this. I plug that person, and I'll plug the family into a grief counselor. Um, it's just, my main goal right now is to form learning partnerships with people where I can help them grow and they help us grow. So the way I basically help Jake is that, to whatever extent that he wants me, is I'll be a sounding board in terms of helping him grow his network, but also use my network. And together, where our clients come from is the integration of what we started out. On one field, I work on the life design side. Jake works on the integrated financial planning side. And Jake tells me stories, and that triggers, hey, I should go talk to whoever, right? But I don't have to make a cold call because I know I'll run into them. And then the final thing, Lawrence, that I'll say, what's the worst thing you can do? And I guess it is a cold call when I think about it. If you call people up out of the blue and you say, I was thinking about you. We had a client that was this, or this. They're going to get mad at you because you told them you were thinking about them. They're going to get mad at you because, you helped them look at something that they didn't consider. And so that's kind of the role in life. The second thing is that I'm a learner. Like I pride myself on being a lifelong learner, and I keep studying. And then I talk to people about the books I read, the seminars. Like I listen to a lot of seminars. I go to a lot of conferences and read a lot of books. So if I'm talking to someone, they'll talk about their crack in the system, and then I can talk about whatever it is. But the trick is, and Jake is a constant reminder of this, it's not up to me to tell people what they need. So what I try to do is address their wants. Don't always do it well. Jessica and Jake will tell you, and my wife will tell you, hey, Joe, shut up. Okay. Which has never been my strong suit. Before I do, one other point though, I do want to just go back and just tell you that one of the things that, in terms of succession planning, I never really pushed either Jessica, my daughter Jessica Araki, by the way, is with Nicola Wealth Management. But I never pushed Jessica, and I never pushed Jake in our business. They both come into our business on their own. I'm very proud of them. I was never on the board of CLU, but they're currently both on the board of CLU. And I'm proud of them as emerging leaders, but I'm most proud of them on the fact that they are developing the capacity to have difficult conversations. And I think my wife, Mary Frances, and I are it gives us great peace of mind knowing that whatever happens to us, that we're in good hands, because in a lot of ways, we're trying to eat our own cooking, as Warren Buffett would say. Have we done it perfectly? No. Is there more to do? Yes. But it's an ongoing learning experiment. And Lawrence, that's how we develop business. It just comes out of our own learning. So anyway,
Was it
maybe there's some questions, or maybe I should shut up.
was it
11:48.
always that way, Jake? In 1980, before 1980, before you formed Life Design Systems, you were with Mutual Life, or when you were with Mutual Life, where did you get your clients?
Um, okay, so when I first started with Mutual Life, one of the things that I did, I got a call from a client at Mutual Life said, I've left Scarborough General, and what do I do with my insurance? And then I got a few more of those calls, and then I realized that Mutual Life of Canada handled the group insurance for a whole bunch of hospitals, St. Mike's, Toronto Western, a whole bunch of them. So I got some cards printed up in about 1968. Got some cards printed up that said important, and I went to the HR department. I said, I'm from Mutual Life of Canada. I said, we have a new system for helping people when they terminate, if they want to keep their insurance going, staple this right to the top of their termination papers. And what that said was important. In order to continue this insurance, call Joseph JR Insurance. And I had my telephone number on it. So I got a whole bunch of people that wanted to convert their insurance and started from there. Then the second thing was that I realized that um, I needed to become an expert in estate planning. And I was probably the agent with Mutual Life that used their estate planning service the most. So I prospected on estate planning. I built a network of advisors. Life Expansion Network, by the way, became an important when I first set up Life Design Systems. I set that up. So part of that network were accountants, lawyers, investment people, um, guys from Wilson Learning Systems. Norm Trainer was one of them. Was in that. Um, anyway, and one of the guys in there was an accountant from South Africa that somebody brought him along, and that guy became my accountant, and they that his firm became my client, and they're still clients to this day for group insurance and partnership insurance and the whole 9 yards. So it was really through networking, and I guess that's where I really developed my skills as a networker. I have a lot of connections, and I that's just been the main thing. So
You just mentioned group insurance for the first time. Do you have much of a benefits practice?
um and not as much as we'd like. So and that's the source of the next stage. I worked with I started a group practice that came out of my relationship with Bob Clark, and I worked with Susan Gillespie over the years, and then we've expanded and developed from there. Um, so one of the things now that I'm working on a new platform with AGA, and I'm working on expanding that platform to including how to provide support services for children and elder care. So we're building out that whole model. It's a work in process, and so we're still trying to make that work. But one of the great things about well, there's two things I guess going back that decision. A was getting into the group business, and secondly, one of the things that PPI did was when I was working with PPI was they had levelized compensation. That levelized compensation really saved my bacon when I, was going through the peaks and valleys, because I was probably one of the few agents that didn't take renewal comp in terms of I had levelized comp. So, but I guess one of the things where, we still get a lot of our business is from, I've been in the business now almost 58 years. So, we've got legacy clients. And some of those legacy clients have become, really good growth clients. Some of them, as you know, in our industry, part of the problem is how do you look after legacy clients, So that's where Jake has filled a crack in our system because I wasn't really good at it. Any other questions?
Oh, lots. Um, so you you work with a lot of other people in that you consult them, you bring them in. Do you work with them on projects that they bring to you as well?
Well, that's one of the things that we're looking at right now. Jake Jake's leadership is that we started charging a fee for life design systems work. Currently, I haven't been charging a fee for my life design work. And part of the reason I haven't done that is that I don't want the commitment that goes with it. Is that, and the other thing is I want to be able to walk away. So the people I work with, the first thing I look at is, first of all, do I like them? Secondly, are they learners? Are they open to my input? Um, and if those two things aren't there, I wind it down, and I'll often give people, I'll give them a book or I'll give them a resource, and I'll say, come back to me. If they don't come back to me, I don't go back to them. So I'm still working, Lawrence, with that. Quite frankly, I'm really quite interested in this whole longevity program that Manulife has developed, because I think it's the future. And I, like I don't, I'm blessed that I don't need to work for income. My only goal is to help Jake grow our business, but I think I can grow our business by taking the time and continue to research the life design side. Because, by the way, one of the things that both Jake and Jessica do is that they've incorporated a lot of stuff that that they didn't want to hear initially, but slowly but surely it seeped in. Anyway, so
You just reminded me of something that we learned in first year life underwriters training course, which is that a client should be sufficiently intelligent to understand what you're talking about, sufficiently responsible to act on it if it's their problem, and they have to be economic growers so that over time you can continue to make money and do business with them.
that's really well said, Lawrence.
I didn't say it. It was Jim Humphreys and LUHEC who told me that first year.
Look, I think it's really amazing, the industry that we're in. There's so many people, there's so many icons in our industry that are willing to share. I mean, it's really, and that's where I think is really, I think the role of life insurance and CLU, I think it has a very important role in our country. Our country is at an inflection point, and I think they need our type of people that can go in and help people wander through the maze and be a seeing eye dog in terms of what should I do, and be there when the inevitable stuff hits the fan, because it's going to hit the fan. And I think we're change agents, and our role is to empower people. My whole role in life right now is to help people identify their potential in their life, and to build and to help them design their own system for achieving their own potential. And my goal with Jake and it is to help create help to expand our model in terms of how we can help families do that. And I'm really proud of Jake and Jessica and the work that they do, that are doing that, because we're in a tough industry. We always you know we always have to eat what we kill, kind of thing. But the eat what you kill model doesn't work anymore. We have to become farmers and help our clients grow. We help our clients grow. The orchard gets better, the environment gets better, and we all grow together, right? Because selling gets in the way. There's so much baggage around insurance, but there's so much of a good story to tell. And basically, what happens when they need it? We need to be there to help the families get through it. And that's our role in life, I think.
Joe, just before we close, what advice would you give to somebody who's young, just starting in the business?
Be a learner, be a lifelong learner. There's no accident you got all those books behind you, Lawrence. Um, but the key thing is, take your learning and apply it in service of others. Is that the key thing is, what Jake and Jake developed this theme that we use in our business. If we do good things for good people, good things will happen. So don't sell, be of service, help people navigate the system, be there when they need it. And the way to do that is, you better look after yourself and eat your own cooking and become the best self you can. And practice the fundamentals, whatever the fundamentals are for you, but work out every day, train every day, learn every day, and be open to love and learning.
Joe, when we first envisaged the Voice of the Masters series in 1999, you were one of the greats who I asked to participate in that. And you're really the only person from that group who is available to speak with us now. Your story hasn't changed, but boy, has it developed. One of the things that's always impressed me about you is that you never stand still. You're always looking to grow, to improve what you do, and you help others to do it, whether with your questions, sitting at the front of CLU, or just with your by example. And I thank you for that. You've been a great example to us all. Next
Lawrence,
week,
can I throw in one more little
sure.
anecdote? When Jake and Jessica and I were over to Sheridan Nurseries and buying our big Christmas tree, the guy came out after we got the Christmas tree and he said, "You need this stuff for the tree," and he called it Stay Fresh. Okay, and it was put in the tree to keep it green. So what I've made as a lifetime motif is Stay Fresh. Is that you need to keep putting stuff in the tree so your tree stays green, you stay green, you stay on your growing edge.
When the last time I heard of Stay Fresh, it was just vitamin C powder. Uh, so thank you, Joe. Next week on December the 19th, we'll be joined by Laurie McNeil, who'll be interviewed by Mr. Dave Patriarch. Laurie is a group specialist, and we'll end the year on a group note. Starting on January the 9th, which will be our first interview in 2025, we'll have Ms. Justine Zavitz. You may recall that her mother, Terry Zavitz, was one of our first interviewees, and Susan St. Amand will be interviewing Justine. Well, she'll be followed week by week by Libby Wildman, Jennifer Walker, Mr. Kelly Adams, which I think will be fascinating, as will Mr. George Sigurdsson, then Roger Thorpe, Sim Gakar, and Mark Halpern, ending up February. As I said, we booked into March as well, and we look forward to seeing you next week for the last of the Meet the Masters of Insurance webinars for 2024. Thank you, Joe Sheehan, for joining us. Thank you,
Keep smiling.
Thank you, Krista Barzo, for our technical assistance as always. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you all.